Okay, so back working on the GMC again. One of the problems that this thing had, well, still has, is it has an inline fuel pump on it, which I'm not too big of a fan of, but at the time it was the only thing I could come up with. And I think there's a video somewhere on it, but it's back right under the bed behind the cab. And the reasons I want to get rid of that is, so the fuel pump sits right under here by the frame rail, right next to the hot exhaust, and there's a high pressure rubber fuel line there. And I was kind of freaked out by the idea of that rubber fuel line bursting next to the hot exhaust under a wood bed. So I'm going to do something different that's going to allow me to have just hard line there. But the fuel pumps don't have the ability for you to hook a hard line up to them. And then the other problem with that fuel pump is, and this was, well, it's on its way out. I'm pretty sure it's on its way out. And part of that is, well, pretty much all of that's due to my fault, really, because whenever we first tried to start this thing, even though I went over the instructions, I don't know how many times, I still screwed it up and hooked the pump up backwards, so it was just sucking air for the first, whatever, minute or two that we tried to start this thing the very first time. Although it did have some kind of like kerosene in it from shipping, but still, that couldn't have been good for it. The next problem is there's the sending unit, and that those fuel pumps in general, from what I understand, do not like to pull fuel at all, and they just like to be fed fuel. There's no fitting on the bottom of this tank for it to pull fuel out of, so it has to suck that fuel all the way up the sending unit and all the way around down to itself, and it makes this weird noise whenever you first turn it on. After the truck sat for a while, you can hear that the bearings are dry. It'll make a weird little vibrating noise and then stop as soon as the gas hits it. And I've been running some of the some stuff in there to try and help the fuel pump out as much as possible. If I can get it out of here. I was running this in there just to help keep that fuel pump lubed up, and I think that might be the only reason it still works. But so the plan is to do away with all of that and hopefully do this right. I found on Summit a electric fuel pump, an in-tank unit, so that way I don't have to worry about the fuel pump not being fed gas, because it'll be in the tank, it'll constantly have gas being fed to it. So that is going to get plumbed into the sending unit there. We're going to see if we can make that happen. And so that way it'll sit in the tank, it'll be fed fuel. I'm going to replace all of this aluminum with steel hardline, and hopefully that will take care of all the problems with the fuel pump. And then this is actually messed up. If you notice, that electrical fitting jiggles around. That broke whenever we put this in the first time, and I originally had this stick shoved up under the bed in order to hold the wire in such a way that the fuel gauge works, so I'm going to fix all of that so I don't have to worry about that. And that's the plan as of now. I'm sure it'll change here in about 5 minutes, so we'll just see what happens with that, I guess. Okay, sit rep, here's what's going on. So originally this had little spot welts holding it on, and about these two spots here. Problem with that being, it was too far down for me to get this little fuel pump on there. And the way the fuel pump is set now, this sock right now sits about an eighth of an inch above the bottom of the fuel tank, which is a little bit lower than where the original one sat. So what I got going on right now is I got to mount the sending unit back on there, and I've split the little case open. It just had 3 tabs that held it together. And what I'm going to do here is there's this clamp right here, and it's not actually connected to the piece of rubber. These two and these 2 clamps are the ones that are actually holding the high pressure fuel line. This rubber under this 5th clamp is just there to kind of give a little bit of vibration resistance to this one clamp, because this is going to sit on here like so, and I'm going to bolt. That's where I'm going to bolt the sending unit to. I got a lock nut and a lock washer that I'm going to put on there just to make sure that doesn't come off, because I don't know how the lock nut is going to hold up to gas. But gonna put that on there, and then I'll have to find another way to stabilize it this way, and then it should be ready to go back in the gas tank, I guess. I would do an update on what's going on. Here is part of the sending unit that I've been working on, and I'll get to putting it back together here in a second. But I had to flange the end of it here for this fitting because I wanted a metal fitting there because I'm trying to get rid of all of the high pressure rubber line in this steel. And originally this would have wanted you just to have a line on there, a rubber line. So I needed to put a flange on the end of it, and this was the only way I could set this up where it would actually work. If I used just one of these tools, it just pushed the metal line straight through. All back together now. Here's the fuel pump, got the sock on it. The sending unit I bolted onto that hose clamp, like I said earlier. And then that copper wire, I added a ground to it because I realized the gauge wasn't working because the sending unit was no longer grounded. And it just slips in that slit in that rubber hose between the clamp and grounds out against the tube there. And again, the tube under this 5th clamp up here is not part of the tube down here. So that's all together. These wires down here came with the pump. These two up here I got off of the fuel pump from the Daytona that Nathan and I started a couple months ago because I couldn't find any actual line that had the insulation that I knew could be in gas. So I went and got those off of a in-tank fuel pump, so I knew that they were going to be good. Ground wire, that's the same. And then the wires run out top here, and here they are right here, and I just got to put some run the wires from where the inline fuel pump was all the way out to the back. And I soldered these together, and I don't know, I just put this JB weld pretty much all over everything because I don't know, their website says that it's completely impervious to gas once it seals. So I mean really they're stiff enough that I don't think they'd move around to ever touch anything, but I feel better with them being covered. And I used it on the John Deere whenever I put that fuel pump in there, and all that stuff seems to be fine. And then finally here's the flare for flare for the little flange fitting here. So that way, that's how I'm going to hook all that up. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully I can get it in the tank. Probably my 5th or 6th attempt. I'm about to go try and put this thing in the gas tank again. I took 2 spacers out of this to bring it even closer to the sending unit because it was still too big. And that 2nd clamp down also, it doesn't have a nut on it, but it pokes through the little backing plate for this, so it's solid mounted now. So that's pretty much the only thing I changed. I'm going to go try this again and see if it works finally. Here, this was probably the 13th attempt, I'm guessing. And I finally got it to go in. I ditched this rubber piece on the bottom because it was just getting in the way. It doesn't cover anything up, and after messing with it a bunch, the piece of paper was just real loose, or piece of rubber actually was real loose. So I did that, and then I had to cut 2 little slots here. That one I put a little bit of a gasket, or not put that JB Weld stuff on it, just on the back. And I probably need to put a little on this side too. The gasket goes all the way up to this lip here, so it'll still cover it up so it won't leak. But without those, it's just impossible to get that thing in there because this has got to have a place, that does too, and there's just not enough room. It's just too small. So if and when that pump ever goes out, I will probably do something. If I have the ability to weld something different in this gas tank, I more than likely will, and I'll probably put it right here. Different pump and everything. So I'm tired, it's late, I'm done with this. It goes in, it's not done though. I think this is the end of day 3. Got that fitting hooked up, steel line runs through, have all the wires for everything hooked up. All that's hooked up. Actually, it's better, it's easier to see from over here. And then there's where the hard line that I made connects to the hard line from the Tahoe, which is on the right. Because where that fitting is where the inline pump used to be. Okay, so I got it out. I appear to have fixed the leak. Neither of the two fittings seem to be leaking. It started, it seems to be running all right. I'm gonna go put some gas in it and see if all that still works out. And I guess go drive around and see what happens. So, filled up the tank. The sending unit for the gauge doesn't appear to be working quite right, being that it stopped at about a quarter of a tank, and then I had to go hit the sending unit a couple of times for it to read what it was supposed to. And on top of that, it's leaking from where the wires come through it, so I'm gonna have to do something completely different with that, I guess. I figured out what the problem was. The JB quick weld, as you can see, did not adhere to the metal very well. I don't know what the deal with that is. Their website says that JB Weld holds up to his gasoline indefinitely, whatever, something like that. And I'm thinking that they meant actual JB Weld, not the quick weld stuff. So I got two things I'm going to try. I'm going to try this, and then this fuel resistant stuff. I'm going to put this just kind of around the whole thing, since I had to cut a slit over here and a slit over there. The gasket covers it up. I would just feel better if it had it there. And then I think I'm going to crack open the fittings, because I had to get them really tight in order for them to not leak, and I'm going to put some of this in there too. It actually, in the directions somewhere, says that's how it's used, is to put on flare fittings and whatnot to keep them from leaking. So I'm going to put some of that in there, and I guess I will show taking all this apart just for my own future reference. But yeah, so unplug that, unscrew that, put the nut back on it. And then the paper towel, that's just there because I zip tied that paper towel on there. I did the same thing on the other one. That was just so after I drove it, I could see if they were leaking or not based on whether or not the paper towel had been absorbing gas. So that's the only reason that is there. But I'm going to take this apart, see if I can figure out why the sending unit for the gauge was stuck, and see if I can't fix this leak, because this appears to be the only problem it has currently. So let's see what we can get done, I guess. Okay, so I got the fuel pump relay unplugged. Okay, so that should have gotten rid of the fuel pressure in the line. So now I can take that fitting apart.